Let me tell you all the tale of the most badass man that ever lived out in the wild, wild west in a little town called Dead Dust. A simple man, a bartender. They called him the Bar Dog. This is his story. Well, he was just a normal man. Like any other, he made a living out on the land. Found himself the owner of a small bar. But things ain't so easy way out so far. A band came into his fine establishment. A gang of outlaw buffoons trying to cause a ruckus. They broke one of his chairs, the Bar Dog now pissed, as those chairs were sentimentally important to him. They belonged to his grandpappy, whom he shared many a meatloaf meals with, one of the rare things that made his childhood happy. He yells at them to skedaddle, but they decide to escalate. They draw their weapons and prepare to attack. But the Bar Dog deftly stops them by throwing several wet washcloths at them straight off of the rack. When in the bar, a mysterious and presumably rich patron, in exchange for the potential protection of his life, returns the favor by giving the Bar Dog a very rare and expensive whiskey labeled Sunset Courage, and also a dime, and a watch for telling time. He pockets the money and slips the watch onto his wrist. Then he dumps his flask out and pours the Sunset Courage into it. The leader of the gang is hiding in his hideout when his buffoons come running back, tails tucked between their legs. As soggy as they can be, they tell their leader about how they were made fools by the local bartender. Angrily, the leader begins to scheme and plan to get revenge on this nobody-nowhere town. So in the middle of the night, he moves out with his gang and kidnaps the daughter of the mayor, quite simple and plain. He leaves a note behind simply reading, "Bring me the bartender or Annie walks the rocks." With the Bar Dog's liquor license in view, the mayor twists the Bar Dog's hand to force him to get his daughter back from the criminal band. He lends the Bar Dog a horse and supplies, says High Rock Cliff is about a day's ride. The mayor tells the Bar Dog not to give the horse dairy. He's lactose intolerant, so it'd be quite hairy. The Bar Dog heads out to High Rock Cliff where he intends to show down, riding alongside the cliff tops until the late evening when he arrives. And there he sees the gang leader and his gang, the same fellas that made the ruckus in his bar the other day. And Annie, blindfolded and tied up by the cliffside, our bartending hero picks up the pace as he rides, charging straight in to stand before no good Billy, that son of a whore. They agree to wait until the clock strikes 7. So the Bar Dog watches his watch and clutches his Winchester. When the sun gets low and there's only a minute left, actually about 40-something seconds, the hero and villain draw their breaths. One of the buffoons starts to say some words, but he's quickly cut off and shut up by his herd. When suddenly, but expected, the watch ticks 7. The sound is deafening, and everybody's ears ring as rounds whip by. The dust flies up and no one can be seen, but everyone can hear the sound of the horse scream. He butts and kicks and the Bar Dog makes a slip. With dust in the air and the sunset light, vision is blurred as weapons held tight. He takes a step behind the horse and gets kicked hard. He thinks he's been shot and starts to stumble away. But hidden behind the dust that he can't see are the rocks of the cliff just a few feet away. His foot slips, but he realizes too late. He's fallen down the cliff and hitting rocks on the way. The dust clears on top of High Rock Cliff, and the buffoon and their leader spot no bartender in their midst. They peer over the cliff and laugh. They cackle when they see the Bar Dog's lifeless body down dead at the bottom. But unfortunate for them, they didn't double check, so they're probably as screwed can be, the idiots. Sleeping on the sand with the sun burning his skin, a gecko crawls over his hand. Our bartender wakes up in pain, with nothing to his name but his sunset courage. Reflecting the sun's light, the bottle looks quite fine, but our bartending hero decides he should save it for later. So he picks himself up and begins to stumble forward, back to the town of dead dust. On the way home, he starts to get thirsty, so he searches for a cactus but can't find any. When in the distance he spots trouble, an old lone coyote wandering towards him, and the dog is probably hungry, judging by the fountainous drool sizzling off the desert sand, smelling like wet cabbage wherever it lands. The bar dog figures he'd make a good meal, so he wraps one of his washcloths around his fist, and they square down against one another in the hot desert heat. The coyote lunges forward, trying to grab some meat, but the bar dog knees it in the snout, rearing its ugly head, before grabbing it by the neck and saying, "God, I'm hungry." He chokes out the coyote and crushes its head with a rock, and he doesn't have anything to cook with, so he tears into it raw. He prefers his meat cooked very, 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 very rare. With a quick rest and meal, now he's prepared. In the extreme desert heat, the bar dog begins to see things. He sees his lost horse drinking milk. Panicked, he runs over to stop the dumb animal. But as soon as he arrives, the visage disappears. He remembers how thirsty he is when he sees a cactus. His mind must be playing another trick on him. But the cactus is in his path, so he'll find out soon enough. And to his surprise, when he arrives, it's really there. He takes up a rock to strike off the top and begins sipping on that sweet cactus nectar. Rejuvenated again, he continues to move forward when he hears from behind the sound of clattering horses. Quickly, he ducks into a small depression in the sand, hiding himself as best as he can. While they ride by, he takes a quick peek. It's the outlaws coming back from their dastardly deed. Shortly after, he spots the town in the distance. The sun's getting low and it'll soon be down. He needs to hurry up and get into town. Out front of his bar, he sees one of the buffoons, twirling his pistol so proud and irresponsibly. He sneaks up along the front porch boards and decks the buffoon square in the gourd, knocking him out and taking his gun. He notices that the cylinder only has one, so he wraps his fists again with more wet washcloth and takes out his flask of sunset courage. He takes a long swig as the sun begins to set. Filled by sunset courage, he feels the strength of 100 Western heroes in his blood. With washcloth hands and a gun in one, he kicks down the door to his own bar. He spots No Good Billy playing the tunes on his piano, while his buffoons ransack the drinks behind the bar. Annie, sitting in a chair, hands tied off to the side, with No Good Billy says, "Surprising that you survived. The mayor skipped town and left us the keys. We're in charge now, and you've got to leave." The bar dog stops and thinks to himself quite long. "Fuck you," he says, and levels his gun. To everyone's surprise, he aims at the floor. Some buffoons laugh for a moment till shrapnel glitters their faces as a large barrel of nitroglycerin explodes under their feet. He keeps it under the floor there just for special cases like these. Everyone behind the bar is killed in an instant. Billy's face is torn with cinders and splinters as Annie threw herself behind a table to survive. But Billy, enraged, stands up to face the bar dog, beginning to draw his weapon, but before he could level his sights, he's shocked when he blinks and the bar dog, fueled by sunset courage, is already right in his face. Before he can think, a quick right jab to the jaw, he falls to the ground and hits his head, and the last thing that he sees are the red washcloth hands. The bar dog stops after everything is said and done, and he turns to the camera and says, This episode is sponsored by Sunset Courage. Use promo code the 2 to get 35% off on your first order. Delivery fees may vary.
Fuck! No, stop!
You made me very upset. You needed that sponsorship to make money.
No, I oh my God, Jesus Christ! I so fucking played it at me, bro.
You better finally accept this tape, because if you lose the sponsorship with Sunset Courage, you'll be the one to pay.
Alright, it's time to stop listening to this album. That's weird. I'm hitting the stop button and it's not stopping. It's not. It's not stopping the music. And it's about to play the next track. What is happening?